This is Trinity Storm and you are watching fourth part of What If Naruto Was Bastard Son of Minato. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto stood there, his eye twitching in frustration at the situation he had just found himself in. Fu could feel the anger radiating from his body and took a few steps away. Before we do anything else, Naruto raged, I just want you to understand how badly you screwed up here. You destroyed a tea set that, while not particularly valuable in terms of monetary value, was a gift from a woman who died and left it to me because she knew I enjoyed her tea. It was valuable to me because it was accompanied by pleasant memories. Then there are the cookies you ruined. Are you seriously mad at us because Hidan destroyed your cookies? Kakuzu asked, raising an eyebrow, because that had to be the stupidest reason to be angry he had ever heard in his entire life. Yes, because they're a little pricey, as well as the fact that my entire life I've been taught not to waste food, Naruto said, his eye twitching in anger, and you destroying it is doing just that. How about we make it up to you by simply killing you so it doesn't bother you anymore, Kakuzu chuckled. Well, while that appears to be a good idea, Naruto said with a sinister chuckle, I'm going to have to pass on it because I don't feel like dying now or anytime in the near future, to be honest. Lord Jashin has decreed that you die in his name right now, exclaimed Hidan. Look, crazy priest man, Naruto said, clasping his hands in front of his mouth before pointing in Hidan's direction with two of them. I'm going to tell you right now that I don't give a damn about your religion, so please stop. You will pay for your arrogance, yelled Hidan as he threw his scythe at Naruto once more. Fu yelled out Naruto's name in fear that he would be hurt, but her expression changed from fear to surprise when she saw him catch the weapon with his bare hand. What made it even stranger was that his hand had turned jet black as he did. Well, Naruto sighed as he turned to face the men who had come to attack him. He had a feeling they would do so at some point because they were a highly feared group of mercenaries and he had killed two of them. So he figured they'd try to kill him at some point, so he took it upon himself to find out everything he could about the members so he'd be ready when they did. You've only irritated me more than before. You will not leave here alive, exclaimed Hidan as he attempted to draw his weapon, but was unable to do so because Naruto had a firm grip on it and was not allowing any wiggle room. Quick question before we continue, Naruto said as solemnly as he could muster, who sent you to kill me? We are not here for you, boy, Kakuzu said, taking a step back to observe what was going on before taking action. He wasn't friends with Hidan in any way. They only traveled together because Hidan couldn't kill him like he had several other members he had partnered up with in the past. We've come to see the Jinchuriki. And why do you need Fu? Asked Naruto, who was both curious and perplexed as to why they would need her. True, she was a Jinchuriki, but they were the most prized items in the major villages as well as Taki, even if the people don't act like it, and taking them would result in the equivalent of a war for whoever did so. He'd heard the Akatsuki organization was small, with only a dozen members, so how the hell would they deal with the consequences of doing this? That's none of your business, Kakuzu said, especially since it won't help you when you're dead. Fair enough, Naruto said simply, his hand crackling with electricity, counter-shock. Because the design contained metal, the electrical current passed through the blades of the scythe he was holding and then through the rope itself. It was done so that the rope was stronger as a whole while remaining flexible enough to be used as a rope, but it was currently being used to conduct electrical currents towards the intended target. Hidan screamed in agony as he was struck by a massive surge of electricity, similar to being struck by lightning. Naruto then used a kunai, one of several he kept on hand for situations like this, to cut the rope holding the scythe. He then threw it back at Hidan, who couldn't avoid it because he was still reeling from the effects of being shocked. The weapon pierced his head at an angle, but all of the blades penetrated it. Fu thought he had dealt with Hidan, but he only growled in rage as he pulled his scythe from his skull and stared at Naruto with a murderous rage on his face. So what I've heard about you is true then, Naruto said as he pulled out his cane for the upcoming battle. I had heard you were deemed immortal, but to see it firsthand is something else entirely. Jashin wants your blood. So it's my blood you're after, Naruto smirked. He then took out a round glass vial of his blood and tossed it in his hand a few times before throwing it to Hidan. Hidan took it in his hand and looked at it, perplexed as he had never been before. He'd never seen a man willingly throw a vial of his own blood at him, or anyone else for that matter. There you have it. Please accept 1 bottle of blood from yours truly. Naruto, Fu said, her mouth open in shock, indicating that she was still not fully comprehending or believing what she had just witnessed. Why would you give him your blood like that? Are you crazy? No, I am not insane, Naruto said with a smile, I am completely normal. I gave him my blood because I was genuinely curious about what he would do with it. He turned around to see Hidan uncorking the vial with a sinister smile on his face before gulping down the contents in one gulp. Now it was Naruto's turn to be surprised, because that had never occurred to him, and he had heard of such things happening in the past due to mental illnesses. Naruto was at a loss for words at this point. However, he eventually began to laugh so hard that he had to hold his stomach because it was hurting from laughing. Now was not the time to laugh, Fu said, ready to fight these men the moment they said they were here for her. If she let these creepy men kidnap her, she'd be damned. Sure, her life was bad as it was, but based on what they said about her, her situation would worsen if she followed them. If you don't take this seriously, these people will kill you. I'm sorry, Naruto apologized as he began to recover from his fit of laughter. He could see clearly after wiping the tears from his eyes from laughing so hard, and he noticed Hidan drawing a circle around him for some strange reason. However, I must inquire as to why the hell you drank my blood. Hidan performs his ritual using people's blood, Kakuzu stated simply. There was no harm in answering the boy's question because Hidan already had his blood and thus doomed himself because once the ritual was completed, he would easily die from it. I suppose that answers my question. I assumed he did it due to some sort of mental illness, Naruto reflected as he pondered that information. A mental illness? Fu inquired, her face puzzled. There have been a few documented incidents in the past of various men who genuinely believed they needed to drink blood to survive due to mental illness. I'm a doctor, so I know what I'm talking about. Oh, Fu said, cringing in her mind because that was disgusting to hear about out of the blue, and she regretted ever asking because now she knew it could happen to anyone. But before you go on with your ritual over there, Hidan, Naruto said as he noticed the man's skin turning black and what appeared to be a skeleton tattoo on him that went all the way down his body, at least as far as he could see because the man's pants blocked a view of his lower body. I'd like to explain why I laughed so hard at your actions. The last words of a dead man, Hidan chuckled, say them, but know that I will simply forget them afterwards because they are so insignificant to me or my Lord Jashin. Thank you very much, Naruto said with a chuckle. Hidan and Kakuzu were perplexed because, by all accounts, the brat should be pleading for mercy right now, but he remained strangely calm throughout. Their leader had warned them about the brat who had killed Kisame and Itachi, and while they had ignored it at the time, believing that the two of them had simply gotten a fat head and died as a result of their pride getting in the way, they were now beginning to think differently. So let me tell you 3 very important things about my blood, which you foolishly consumed. The first and most important fact is that my blood is extremely contagious. Wait, Hidan said, a puzzled expression on his face, what? My blood is infectious, Naruto said as he conjured up some of the blood in his arm to leak out and form multiple small balls that he began to twirl around like stress balls. I use it as a weapon against my opponent because my bloodline allows me to infect the blood of others in such a way that I have complete control over their bodies. As an example, Hidan noticed his hands falling to his sides and stiffening to the point where he couldn't move them at all. Fu simply stared in awe because Naruto had yet to cease to amaze her. But it wasn't just her. The demon within her was impressed as well. The process takes a bit because of multiple factors, Naruto smirked, the main one being how much blood I throw at you. It doesn't take much, and yet you drank a lot of it, hastening your demise. You will die in the name of Jashin, exclaimed Hidan, his teeth clenched. He couldn't open his mouth properly to yell his threat because Naruto was using his blood to completely stiffen his body, making him unable to move. The second thing you should know, Naruto continued, unconcerned about the threat directed at him. He was keeping an eye on Kakuzu in case he decided to intervene in what he was doing to Hidan. But, to his surprise, the man just stood there and watched Hidan suffer without doing anything to help him. Is that my blood can be explosive when I want it to be? As a result, what you ate was the equivalent of an organic bomb. What the fuck? Exclaimed Hidan. Yes, but the last thing you should know about my blood is that it is also highly combustible. So have fun burning yourself to ash. Hidan screamed in agony as his entire body burst into flames as Naruto smiled and clicked his fingers. This went on for a while before his body began to collapse on itself because it had turned to ash and had been knocked over by the wind. Well damn, chuckled Kakuzu, you managed to kill Hidan. You don't seem too upset about it, Naruto said, twirling his cane in his hand before slamming it into the ground and allowing it to stand on its own. He put his hands together and cracked his knuckles once he was in place. To be honest, I couldn't stand him. The only reason I was paired with his religious ass was so he couldn't kill me like he did the other members who had previously been partnered with him. I thought you said you weren't a shinobi, Fu said, beginning to wonder if Naruto had lied to her, and if so, why. I'm not, Naruto stated simply with a shake of his head, I'm just a doctor. Yet you have a bloodline ability as well as the skills to kill a powerful foe in an unconventional way. Think about it this way, Naruto said simply, you've trained for so long to fight and defeat shinobi. You understand the fundamentals of the art, so you understand how they act, think, plan, and create. Nonetheless, I was never trained in the field like you were and had to teach myself to fight like only a doctor could. That is my main advantage in a fight because no one has ever trained to fight a doctor, so they are unprepared when I win. I can't fight that logic, Fu simply sighed, knowing he was correct. But don't you know, there are some things that can easily beat smartness and foresight? Smirked Naruto. Awkwardness and stupidity can do so easily. The best swordsman in the world does not need to fear the second best swordsman in the world. Rather, he should be afraid of some ignorant antagonist who has never held a sword in his hand before. He doesn't do the thing he ought to do, so the expert isn't prepared for him. He does the thing he ought not to do, and often it catches the expert off guard and ends him on the spot. That sounds like you stole it from a book, Fu observed. And I did, Naruto explained, because that quote has been true for me my entire life as I fought many who thought me weak. Sorry to cut the idle chit-chat short, said Kakuzu, who was irritated that the two of them were ignoring him despite the fact that he was standing right in front of them. He was an infamous S-rank shinobi, but they pretended he wasn't even a problem. But you still have me to deal with, and you won't beat me now that I know about your little blood trick. True, Naruto said, raising his hand slightly. In the palm of his hand, a clear ring appeared. Bruma. What the hell is this? Exclaimed Kakuzu, as he had never seen anything like it before. This is my operating room, Naruto said, putting one hand behind his back and using the other to emphasize his point. And I am essentially God within this field of power. Like hell, I'd believe that. Exclaimed Kakuzu before forming the hand seals to launch a massive fireball at Naruto. Naruto simply grinned as the attack approached because he was not afraid in the least. Tekt, Naruto said simply, pointing upwards with his finger. The fireball then swung 90 degrees and soared into the air before exploding. Is that the best you've got against me? At this point, Kakuzu was furious that the brat had not died yet. He wanted to charge forward and attack because long-range attacks were apparently ineffective. However, Naruto's assertion of power within this field prompted him to consider a different approach. So he decided to retreat in order to get out of the field and figure out a proper plan here. "Good plan," Naruto said as he saw Kakuzu attempt to leave his room. "But too little, too late," he said, pulling out a kunai that began to glow with green lightning as he pulsed power through it. Shambles. Kakuzu had just exited Naruto's power field when he reappeared within it, and to his surprise and horror, right next to Naruto himself, who then plunged the kunai into Kakuzu's chest. "This operation will destroy your body from the inside out," Naruto grumbled as he watched Kakuzu convulse in pain as the attack surged through his body. "Gamma knife," says one. As his power destroyed him, Naruto could feel all 5 of the man's hearts pop from within his body. He had read about this ability in Law's journal, and when he read about Kakuzu and heard the rumors about him having multiple hearts, he was glad to master it so that he could easily eliminate him. He saw the life leave his eyes as he drew the blade out, Kakuzu's blood squirting from the wound. Naruto extended his hand to grab his cane and formed a scythe blade from Kakuzu's blood, swinging it and cutting Kakuzu down the middle. This was overkill, and he knew it, but for men who were essentially immortal through inhumane means, it was kind of necessary. "I'm sorry you had to see me like that," Naruto apologized to Fu as he pulled out multiple bottles from which he collected Kakuzu's blood and stored it for later. "That's why I try to avoid fighting whenever possible. When I fight, I use a sadistic fighting style because I don't know how to stop and enjoy myself. I don't like that version of myself, so I try to avoid it whenever possible." "Completely understandable," Fu said, waving her hands comically. Sure, Naruto seemed insane to her, but he was her only friend now, and he was one even though he knew exactly what she was. She was not one to pass judgment and would give Naruto the benefit of the doubt in this situation. "But were you really that upset about the cookies?" "Actually, yes," Naruto admitted, "because I was being honest about not wasting food. In addition." "Well. Go on," Fu smirked, "I'm actually curious to hear what you have to say." "Well, the baker has a son who he is training in his craft," Naruto sighed, "and the son is quite effeminate with the clothes to match his personality." "Oh," Fu said, putting the puzzle pieces together, "so you're homophobic?" "No," Naruto stated flatly, "I have no issues with who people fall in love with. It's just..." Naruto was a little embarrassed to say the next bit. "Sweet Kami," Fu began to laugh now that she saw it, "he's in love with you, isn't he?" "Yeah," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his neck, "but the problem is that I am straight, but he does not care and enjoys, quote, the thrill of the chase, so he continues to do so in some strange hopes of turning me gay. So I have to deal with that awkwardness every time I go to get those cookies." Naruto growled, his eye twitching, because Fu was laughing so hard about the whole thing. More would have been said, but 24 Taki shinobi surrounded him at that point. Fu was terrified as she rose to her feet. "You are under arrest for the attempted theft of our village Jinchuriki," said a large man with an eye patch, who Naruto assumed was the leader of this group. "I wasn't trying to kidnap Fu," Naruto said, raising an eyebrow. "She assisted me in locating some plants that grow in this area, and then we were attacked." "You dare to leave your post without permission?" exclaimed one of the shinobi, moving to strike Fu across the face. But Naruto was faster and threw a kunai into the man's arm, severing the tendon and rendering him useless in the absence of proper medical treatment. "Do not hurt my friend," Naruto said, his eyes filled with murderous rage. "I'll accompany you to avoid further complications, but if you hurt her in my presence, I'll make your life a living hell beyond description." Fu blushed slightly as she heard Naruto care enough about her to threaten so many men at once. She never expected a man to do such a thing for her, being a Jinchuriki and all, so it was a pleasant surprise. Fu then noticed the leader getting behind Naruto and roughly pushing him towards the village, but she did notice Naruto give her a smile to tell her not to worry. And for some odd reason, she listened to him. Taki office leader. Naruto was brought into the village of Taki, and he was amazed by the layout of the village because most houses were in the trees, so unless you knew what you were looking for, you would most likely miss it entirely. Naruto was led to a building that was clearly the place where the village's leader worked, and while it was not as grand as those found in larger villages, it was still larger than the main houses. The big shinobi with the eye patch who had ordered Naruto to come along in the first place basically shoved him inside. Naruto really wanted to punch this asshole because he didn't like being shoved like this, but he didn't want to make waves in a village where he could do future business because that would add to his client list and open up new potential vendors to get rare ingredients for medicine. Once inside, he was directed to the main office and shoved into the room once more. Inside, behind the desk, sat a man with ink-black eyes and long, dark brown hair. He wore a shinobi hat to symbolize his shinobi status in the village. He was dressed in gray slacks, a green shirt, and shinobi sandals. In addition to his regular outfit, he wore a gray shoulder pad with a brown strap over his left shoulder. On top of that, he was dressed in a light yellow kimono jacket, light gray pants, a red scarf around his neck, and a turquoise haori. He appeared to be in the middle of paperwork, and judging by the amount of stress on the man's face, it had been a long day. He saw his men bring in someone he'd never met before, and whenever that happened, it meant someone had tried to infiltrate their village, and now he'd have to fill out the paperwork for an execution. "Sweet merciful Kami," the man said as he slammed his head against the desk. He was exhausted from the amount of paperwork he had to do today, and he didn't want to deal with this shit. Now he understood why his father had been grumpy for most of his life since taking over as village leader after his father died protecting it. Why do I have to be burdened with so much paperwork? He took a deep breath to calm himself before raising his head to face the man they had brought to him. "I'm a fairly busy man," he sighed, "so let's get right to the point. Who are you, and why have you decided to invade our village?" "Invade?" asked Naruto, raising an eyebrow. "Why do you think I invaded?" "Because you're here before me, and under heavy guard, so it's obvious you tried to invade us," the man explained. "He didn't try to invade us, sir," said the eye-patch shinobi. "Then why is he here?" asked the leader, rubbing his temples as he suffered from a headache. Naruto noticed him suffering from one and knew he had the medicine to help if given the chance. "He was caught talking to the demon bitch out in the forest," the eye-patch shinobi explained, "and from what we heard, he was trying to convince her to leave, most likely to join another village in order to increase their own power." "Is this true?" the leader inquired, his face puzzled. If this were true, the consequences for Naruto would be even worse because this village despised it when people tried to steal their village weapon. Sure, they hated the young woman with all their might, but she was their weapon, or slave, to those who thought of it that way. "What is your name?" "First and foremost, answer the first question," Naruto sighed. The man who had brought him in had only arrived at the end after killing Hidan and his partner, so how could he have known what the hell they were talking about beforehand? Naruto had a sneaking suspicion that they had been listening near the end, which infuriated him because they just stood there and watched him and Fu get attacked like that, only showing up when he was weakened in the fight. But why he thought he was trying to persuade Fu to leave was a mystery, because he hadn't. He had told her about what the world had to offer, but not to persuade her of anything. "I was simply conversing with the young lady." "When did it become a crime?" "Because if it is a fairly stupid one." Naruto felt the man shove him again, and it took a lot of willpower not to just slug this guy and be done with it. Sure, the man was taller and had more muscle mass, but he also had the skills and bloodlines to easily counteract that advantage. "Don't dare lie to our leader, you little brat," the shinobi warned. "We watched you converse with the demon and overheard your plans to get her to leave." "So you were standing there while I was talking to Fu?" Naruto asked, glaring at the man. "Yet you did nothing as 2 Akatsuki members came and attacked us." "You're a shinobi. How dare you!" exclaimed the man as he prepared to punch the brat. "Stand down!" yelled the leader, slamming his fist on his desk. He had gotten to his feet in an attempt to end this situation before it deteriorated into something far worse than it could have been if nothing was done. "Yes, sir," said the shinobi, though his tone suggested he was hesitant. "Now," the leader said, sitting back down because he didn't need to physically intervene in this conflict, "I'll ask you again who you are." "Oh, I'm sorry," Naruto chuckled, "where have my manners gone? My name is Naruto, and I am known as the Surgeon of Death throughout the elemental countries." His response stunned the men, especially the jackass who had essentially tried to prove his superiority by bullying him with his shoving. As he moved away from Naruto, the man began to sweat profusely in a comical manner. The man had heard what Naruto could do to those who enraged him and did not want to end up like that. "Oh, what is this?" Naruto smirked. "You don't want to shove me around like you used to? Come on, try it once or twice more for a good laugh. We'll see who ends up laughing." "No," the man said faintly as the color in his face faded in fear, "that's okay." "Leave us alone," the leader said, motioning the shinobi out of the room so he could speak with Naruto privately. "Are you sure about that?" asked another shinobi, perplexed that their leader would send them all out of the room, leaving him vulnerable. "This is the Surgeon of Death," the leader explained. "He is a neutral man who is not allied to any of the major villages or even has a home in one, so he is not here to harm us or invade our village in some way." "I'm glad to see you recognize me," Naruto said as he watched the shinobi who had escorted him leave. He made the man who shoved him shudder by making a fist and sticking out his thumb in a cut-throat motion. He had no intention of killing or even injuring the man, but he didn't know that would be the case. Because it simplifies introductions. "While you know who I am, I'm afraid I don't know what your name is." "Oh right," the man said, "my name is Shibuki, and I am the leader of Taki, a minor shinobi village." "Oh, so you're Shibuki," Naruto said solemnly. "Wait a minute," Shibuki said, surprised that someone as famous as Naruto would recognize him when so few people in their village were known to outsiders. "Are you aware of who I am?" "You were Fu's friend," Naruto grumbled, because he couldn't understand abandoning a friend like this man had done, and he would never do so without just cause so that his friend would understand and not feel betrayed by his departure. "And you left her to her fate in the woods." "Well shit," Shibuki exclaimed, surprised. "Fu told you about that, didn't she?" "I'm surprised she trusted anyone enough to talk to them about it." "No thanks," Naruto said dismissively. "Look," Shibuki sighed as he prepared himself, "I can explain." "I don't see how you can explain what you did," Naruto admitted, because he couldn't think of a single way to explain it. "It wasn't my fault. That's what everyone says when they're caught in their nonsense." "Stop!" yelled Shibuki, enraged that Naruto was not allowing him to explain himself. "Please allow me to explain my case before passing judgment." "Okay," Naruto sighed, "I'll let you do it, but this explanation better be good because I don't see how you can explain it. My father led Takigakure well for many years until his death after drinking the hero water while attempting to protect his village from foreign powers." Shibuki expressed his sadness as he remembered his father. The water gave him temporary strength boosts, but it also shortened his life, resulting in a rather premature death. When he died, his position as leader was passed down to me. "I'm not seeing how this explains things," Naruto said, raising an eyebrow. "In my youth, I was friends with Fu, which my father was fine with because he did not see her as a weapon, as most people in this village do. But he warned me that one day I would succeed him as the leader of this village, and that I would have to cut ties with her. I know what I did was wrong, and I know I hurt her by not telling her the truth. But, as the leader of this village, I must consider the entire community. My power is based on public opinion, and most people despise her." "But you are the leader of this village," Naruto pointed out, perplexed as to how someone in charge of a village could be powerless to help someone like Fu. This was the main reason he despised politics, because it complicated an already complicated life even more than it had to be, so why not help her? I was only 13 years old when I was appointed leader of this village. I was not fully prepared to take the position, and various members of the council took advantage of that to usurp power from me. I've been trying for years to reclaim everything, but it's been difficult. Yet, while I could have done it faster, there was a pressing matter that I had to attend to that has put me in a mental bind that I see no way out of. Alright, Naruto said, beginning to understand why Shibuki had left Fu in such a hurry with so much on his plate. This wouldn't have been a problem if he just told Fu about it in the first place. I'm curious what the problem is now. For the past few years, the councilmen have been working against my wishes to implement a new program that they are about to pass. The plan is to simply use Fu as a breeding tool in the hopes that the children she will be forced to bear will be stronger, allowing us to increase our numbers with more powerful shinobi, thereby increasing the overall strength of this village. While I may not be able to visit her as frequently as I used to when I was her friend, I refuse to let her suffer such a fate and have used every trick in my arsenal to slow down the process. But the problem is that the more time I spend assisting her in this way, the longer it takes to reclaim the power I've lost. Okay, Naruto gritted his teeth, who are they? I'll do it myself. No, Shibuki said, waving his hands to attract Naruto's attention, you can't do that. If you truly care about Fu as you claim, Naruto said, glaring at the man, then why stop me from killing the men who want to rape her? They despise her so much that they force her to live in the woods and protect them, yet they want her to lie down and take it while they defile her and struggle through multiple pregnancies that will result in the birth of children who will most likely share her fate. Because even though I despise them for attempting to do this, Shibuki slammed his fists on the table in rage. A tear fell from his left eye because he truly felt powerless to help his friend, and it had been eating him up for years. He'd never had the chance to talk to anyone about it, and it was bringing up a lot of repressed emotions. They are still high-ranking men in this village, and their deaths would be truly devastating. I truly want them gone, but I can't because there is no one to replace them if I do. So, what now? You're just going to let it happen? No, Shibuki replied, chuckling slightly, because now that you're here, you've provided me with the perfect solution to my conundrum. Come again? Naruto asked, perplexed by what was going on in this man's head. You are someone Fu trusts, and not only that, but you are not allied with a major village, so I know you won't use her or sell her off to one for money because I heard you were an honorable man, Shibuki said. So I beg you to remove her from here so she will no longer suffer as she has been forced to do her entire life. You understand the extreme request you're making here, right? Asked Naruto, surprised to hear the man suggest this of all things. By stealing a Jinchuriki from a village, I will receive a large bounty from this village. As a result, many people will want to take me out. I comprehend the Ramafika. Shibuki had just begun when he was interrupted. I'll do it, Naruto said simply. Shibuki was surprised by his response because he had expected to have to work harder to persuade him to do so because Naruto was correct in stating that the consequences would be severe. You will, Shibuki said. Of course, Naruto replied, because I help my friends when they are in trouble. But if I do this, I have two requests from you. I will do it if it is within my power. The first thing I want you to do is write a letter to Fu so she understands why you left. She has a right to know the truth about this. Well, I can easily understand that, and you are correct. But the second thing I want, Naruto said, trying not to be too demanding, I have heard that this village has something called Hero's Water. If you ask for our village's most prized resource, Shibuki said, I'm going to stop you there and tell you that I can't give it to you. I don't need all of it, Naruto said, shaking his head, just a syringe full for research purposes. For research purposes? Shibuki inquired. I'm curious if there's a way to dilute the chemical compound that gives the drinker a massive boost in power, so you don't die at the end. That's it. Well, Shibuki said as he stood up and swiped his hand across a seal on the wall. A hidden panel in the wall revealed the clear glass gourd, which was 3/3 full of water and was sealed with a cork with wax on the edges to show that the seal was still intact. As long as it's only a small amount, it'll be fine. He then handed the gourd to Naruto, who took out a syringe with a long needle and pierced the gourd to access the liquid inside. Because the container was made of glass, he took great care not to break it. He then drew the plunger up to extract the liquid for transportation. He extracted the syringe once it was full before concealing it behind his back and storing it for future research. He waited for Shibuki to finish writing his letter to Fu after he finished his extraction. When he was finished, he rolled it up, sealed it with a wax seal, and handed it to Naruto to take to Fu. "Please keep her safe," Shibuki said, still clutching the letter and looking Naruto in the eyes to ensure there was no deception in them. "Because, even though my position does not permit it, she is still and will always be my friend." "You have my word that she will be fine," Naruto said, returning the gaze with a serious one of his own, "and as you have probably heard from whoever told you about me, I always keep my word once I give it." "Well, since our transaction here is complete," Shibuki said as he sat down and sighed, "I request that you leave my village. I'd say I hope we meet again, but after what's about to happen, I know that won't happen, so I'll just wish you luck." "You, too," Naruto said as he prepared to leave, "without Fu to worry about. I hope you can make things right in this village once more." He then summoned a door, walked through it, and vanished, leaving Shibuki alone with his thoughts. That brings us to 2. Naruto returned to the location where they first met to find Fu tending to the wounds inflicted by the shinobi who had come to arrest him. He invited her to accompany him because he was coming to take her away from all of this. She didn't believe him at first, but then he handed her the letter Shibuki had written to her. She read it, and as she did, Naruto noticed tears welling up in her eyes before falling from them. Shibuki had told her what would happen if she stayed, and she cried as she was told the truth. "All these years I've hated that asshole for abandoning me," she finally said weakly. "Despite this, he remained concerned about me. Why didn't he tell me that from the start?" "It wasn't his fault," Naruto stated simply. "He was forced into his position when his father died, and everything happened so quickly. Just know that he still cared enough to keep you safe from those who would defile you. How do we get out of here? A better question is, where am I going?" "Well, I have an answer to both of those questions," Naruto said as he pulled out another scroll. "A while back I obtained citizenship papers for Spring Country for myself and 4 of my friends. While I was doing that, 2 of them were killed on a mission, so I had 2 of these to spare, and you can have one. From there, the possibilities are limitless. You really think far ahead, don't you?" Fu chuckled as she wiped her tears away. "Not always," Naruto admitted with a shrug, "but I try. But now that we've established all of this, and I've offered you a better life away from the hatred of men I can only describe as scum. All you have to do now is go through that door." That last bit he said as he summoned a door to his operating room. "To be honest, it's through this door, a few minutes of waiting, and then through another door." "You just killed the mood by saying that last bit," Fu said, his face flushed. "The way you said it made it feel like a fairy tale of some kind, but then you had to ruin it with reality." "I'm sorry," Naruto said, laughing as he held open the door, "but that is kind of my field of expertise." Fu simply laughed as she walked through the door, closely followed by Naruto. The following day, Naruto had finally arrived at the Kan residence, and as he approached the massive residence, he paused for a moment. He had to take a few deep breaths because his anger had reached unhealthy levels, and he needed to calm himself or else he would reveal his plan for his former family. Most of what he had planned was already in play, but now all of the pieces were in place, and he just needed to make his point. When he was finally calm enough to continue the last leg of the journey to the front gate, he did so. He made it to the gate without being interrupted or ambushed, but no one really came this way because the Kan family was the type of people who killed trespassers, so people didn't want to come out this way unless they had to. Naruto approached the gate and pulled the rope, which he had to admit was quite fancy, causing the bell to ring. He stood there waiting for someone to arrive, which irritated him because the entire setup was futile in execution. There were no guards at the front gate, but plenty around the house, leaving the servants' quarters completely unguarded in the event of a siege. To make matters worse, those who waited at the front gate were forced to wait while the one guard in charge opened it, forcing whoever was there to wait on them as if it were a privilege or something. Naruto honestly wanted to leave because he couldn't stand all the vanity, but he waited because he had a plan he devised and he was determined to stick to it no matter what. It had taken 16 years to get here, but it would be so worth it when it was all finished. When the guard finally arrived at the front gate, he demanded to know who he was and why he was there. In response, Naruto growled and introduced himself to the man, handing him the scroll that Zuko had given him when he was still in Konoha. The guard examined it, determined it was genuine, and then opened the gate, warning him to watch his tongue or suffer the consequences. The guard then led him along the log road that led to the house, and as he walked by, he noticed the various fields of trees and fruits owned by the Kan family. However, the lush and beautiful scenery simply masked the truth of those who kept it up. The Kan family was a ruthless business family. They took great pleasure in destroying competition in such a way that it not only left the family who owned those businesses destitute, but they would also enslave them and force them to work the fields through shady dealings or legal means. Naruto could sense their anguish and even witnessed one such incident in which a boy a few years younger than himself was beaten by a guard for simply speaking out of turn. Naruto could only growl in rage at his former family's darkness, and he could only smile inwardly that his mother had left when she did and turned out far better than they had. She died a good person, with at least one person in the world caring enough to remember her name, whereas if the rest of her family died, no one would genuinely care and would even rejoice at their demise. They eventually made it to the room where the head of the household was, which contained numerous medical instruments to keep him alive until the heart transplant was completed. The guard ushered him in and threatened him to be on his best behavior, which Naruto implied was a slap in the face because he couldn't care less what threats this man had to make. Naruto had killed so many bandits, including Nin, as well as several members of the Akatsuki, that he was not afraid of a single guard with a massive ego. Naruto opened the door and went inside to find Ozai surrounded by a dozen personal doctors and his 2 children. Ozai saw him enter the room and immediately ordered the other doctors to leave. They followed orders and left Naruto alone with the other 3. "So you're the surgeon of death I've heard so much about," Ozai said arrogantly, "and you don't seem like much." "Well, I could easily say the same for you, being stuck in a hospital bed like you are," Naruto said with a twitchy eye. "Listen here, you arrogant whelp," Ozai began before being cut off. "No, you listen," Naruto said simply, "you came here for my medical expertise, so keep your insults and arrogance to yourself, or I will simply walk out that door and never return. And before you think you can simply order your men to detain me and force me to operate on you, let me state unequivocally that I will kill anyone who tries and feel no remorse for it. Plus, even if you tried to play the political game to make me suffer, as I've heard you've done to so many others, I'm friends with a half-dozen daimyos from all over the world, 3 of whom have access to shinobi. So, let's get past the threats and arrogance and get to work, shall we?" "Fine," Ozai said, enraged that this peasant dared to respond to him in such a way. He was actually planning on doing what Naruto said, but with that many connections, he couldn't do much against Naruto or else his family would be doomed on such a massive political level. "How much money do I owe you?" "Well, that depends on what needs to be healed," Naruto said, taking a step forward. "I'll do a quick physical and total up what is owed by what needs to be fixed." "How do I know you won't just try to bleed me dry of my money by raising prices?" Ozai inquired. He didn't get to where he was by letting people get one over on him, and he'd be damned if he started now. "I have no need to do such a thing because my client list is so extensive," Naruto explained as he held up his hands, which were glowing with chakra to perform the physical. "I make far too much money with the prices of set to need to try to defraud someone. Being one of the best in the medical field literally pays." "Okay, then. Do what is necessary so that you can leave sooner, Ozai stated. He disliked conversing with those he considered commoners, of which this brat was one. Naruto finished what he was doing, took out his price book, and wrote down the bill that had to be paid before he began. Ozai growled because the price was high and he felt the brat should heal him simply because of his family name, but his daughter had told him that he didn't care and only wanted the money owed. So Ozai summoned a butler, one who had served him since he was 5, and instructed him to go retrieve the funds that Naruto had billed him, but no more. Well, while we wait for that man to return, Naruto said, crossing his arms, I have a deal I'd like to make with you. And why would I strike a deal with someone like you? Because I'll pay half the bill. Those words shocked not only Ozai, but also his children, who were curious as to why Naruto would do such a thing. Go Onna. I'd like you to answer a few questions I have, Naruto said. You offer my father the opportunity to reduce the amount paid for your services in exchange for having your questions answered, Zuko asked, his face puzzled. Why? Because these are questions that only he can answer, Naruto explained with a passive wave of his hand, and it is this fact that gives him leverage. Ask away, boy, Ozai said, happy to do so if it meant spending less money. Before I ask, I need to explain something, Naruto says, sighing. I am an orphan who lost my parents when I was only 4 years old. While you may not care because you have all of this going for you in terms of money and political power, just trust me on this. When I thought I was going to die on those streets, I was saved by a young woman who had lost her own child within a few years of his birth due to a lack of funds to care for him. She told me I reminded her of her late son, so she took me in and cared for me. I loved her like a child loves their mother, and I was content. But my joy was short-lived because she died a year later, leaving me alone once more. After she was laid to rest and buried, I was given her few possessions, including her diary. It was there that I discovered who she was and what she had to endure in order to survive. That is why I am asking you this question. Why did you abandon your own daughter Mocha when she begged you for help not only for herself but also for the child she gave birth to? The looks of surprise on their faces were priceless, and Naruto wished he had a camera to capture and preserve the moment. They never expected anyone to inquire about the forgotten member of their family, and hearing someone inquire about her out of the blue was completely unexpected. Why do you want to know about my pitiful little sister? Azula growled at the thought of her. Because that woman saved my life when she had next to nothing for herself, Naruto said solemnly, and any woman who would do such a thing did not deserve to be treated like she was. So I'll ask it again. Why did you abandon her? My former daughter was a disgrace to the Kan name. Ozai said with venom-laced words that seemed to choke him. She did not act like us and became a hindrance to who we were. So I intended to use her as a means of gaining political power through an arranged marriage, but she ran away. I disowned her because she defied my orders by fleeing with a commoner. And what about the child she came to you for help with? Naruto inquired. The child was simply born, so what did the child do to deserve such treatment? That child was worthless, Ozai said. He was born out of wedlock from a commoner's seed, which is of no use to our family. He was an abomination who was unworthy of life, and I will not have him in my home. Thank you for answering my questions, Naruto said simply and emotionlessly. For years, he had wanted to know the true reason for his and his mother's suffering, and while he believed the words in her diary, he wanted to hear those words spewed from the man who had cast her out. What was the point of that? Azula wondered, still perplexed as to why he had asked those questions in the first place. To slate my own curiosity, Naruto explained as he walked over to the door and drew a seal. He activated it and placed it on the door, preventing it from being opened. What are you doing? Zuko demanded angrily. Making it so we won't be interrupted, Naruto said simply, holding up his hand and whirling it around. This entangled Zuko and his sister in wires, suspending them in the air as they yelled their outrage at being put in such a situation. What are you doing to my children?" exclaimed Ozai, who wanted to help them but couldn't because he was trapped in the bed with the tubes in his body. "Allow them to go. You've come to heal me. And now why the hell would I help you?" growled Naruto. "Because that's what you were paid to do, filthy commoner," exclaimed Azula as she struggled in vain to break free from her shackles. "So the high and mighty insult the filthy commoner who has the ability to save them," Naruto chuckled, "but I don't want your money. I just want you to suffer." "For what?" exclaimed Zuko. "My mother," Naruto said, glaring. "What?" they all asked at the same time, as they were even more perplexed than before. "I'm surprised you haven't figured it out yet," Naruto said with a shake of his head. "Apparently money can't buy intelligence because you're all idiots. I am the so-called abomination unworthy of life, as you boldly asserted." "Impossible," Ozai said as the gravity of the situation began to dawn on him. "How?" "I struggled most of my life, but I made something of myself thanks to you," Naruto said, his scowl deepening even more. "And now I've come to make you pay for what you did to my mother and me." "Unhand us!" yelled Azula, refusing to let her hated little sister's bastard child do this to her. "Not yet," Naruto said as he walked over to a bottle of scotch on the table. He removed the top with one hand before pouring himself a glass, which he gulped down. Because of his bloodline, he was able to filter out the alcohol so that he didn't get drunk, but he still enjoyed the taste of it when it was finely aged. He drank with many of his wealthy customers over the years and enjoyed the conversations that came with it. "I really want to kill you, believe me, but I can't bring myself to do it. And, before you ask or even consider it, it's not because we're related or anything. I'm staying my hand because you haven't done anything to me directly. You screwed me as well as my mother, but all you've done to me is ignore my existence, which I don't think warrants death. If that's the case, then why are you doing this?" Ozai asked, coughing slightly from the stress of it all on his heart. "Because we're just waiting for the others to arrive," Naruto explained as he poured another glass of scotch. "You see, what I did was inform the various families you've screwed over of what I was planning to do and told them to come over and get their pound of flesh from you. They have the right to do so because they have been personally harmed by your actions, and it is only fair that they get to end you. Our guards will defend us as they always have," Azula boasted. "They wouldn't dare to attack us. They would be killed simply for attempting." "True," Naruto smirked, "you've hired some of the most ruthless, yet powerful, guards to protect your home over the years. But, as you can see, I conducted my own research and discovered a simple way to eliminate that threat. Because you let it happen, the majority of them drink the night away once a week. You don't really mind because they keep your slaves in line and guard your house, so it's just a matter of doing business for you. However, I learned from a source that they do something else that day. They get drunk and then rape the maid who is supposed to serve their drinks. Because they threatened to kidnap her daughter and force her to take her place if she resisted, she is the only one who has to service about 100 men all at once." "How did you know she was telling the truth?" Azula snarled. "How can you be sure she wasn't just another whore?" "Because I was the one she paid to heal her wounds from the various bouts of rape," Naruto said with a sad shake of his head, remembering those times, one of which was so bad that she nearly died from the numerous injuries sustained. He healed her for free because she couldn't afford to keep paying for his treatment because what he healed was basically renewed within a week or two. The damage was easily repaired without a lot of materials, so it wasn't too much of a financial loss for him to do so. In addition, she performed all 6 abortions she had to endure because the men provided no form of protection or allowed her to use any form of contraception. So she went through it all and tried to hide it from her daughter, but her daughter was no fool and knew what was going on with her mother. So I sent the mother a special poison to put in the men's drinks, which she did without hesitation." "She did what?" Ozai enragedly demanded. "She poisoned them," Naruto explained as he took out his watch to check the time, "and since I timed my visit just right." At that precise moment, they heard the guard standing outside their door scream in agony as the poison began to do its job and kill the poisoned. It was a slow-acting poison that caused the body to slowly die while restricting the muscles so that all they could do was scream in agony for a few hours before all vital functions simply shut down completely. The disadvantage of using this poison was that it took so long to reach that point and was easily curable until it reached the final stages, at which point you just had to know you were poisoned in the first place. These men would be unaware of the symptoms, and the poison had been slipped into their drinks just a few days before, so he had timed it perfectly and arrived at the end of their lives. As they spoke, various guards throughout the estate dropped to their knees in agony and screamed in pain as the poison took effect. The massive mob that had come to ransack the place and kill the family who had stolen everything had broken down the front gate. It took about 10 minutes for Naruto to hear the knock on the door that he had instructed them to use to indicate their arrival. "And that sound means that our brief reunion has come to an end," Naruto said as he retracted the wires holding his aunt and uncle in the air. They collapsed to the ground and stared at him in terror. Naruto then went over to the door and ripped the seal off before opening it to reveal a group of people standing there with various tools to use against the Kan family. "And now I will leave you three in the capable hands of these fine gentlemen." "No, wait," Ozai said in fear, seeing so many faces of people whose lives he had ruined while smiling on his own. "Protect us. We will pay whatever price you set." "I'm sorry, but I believe you mistook me for a mercenary," Naruto chuckled as he turned his head to face them without fully turning his body around, "but I am not one of those. Sir, I am a doctor, and a very good one. You can't leave us like this," exclaimed Ozai, desperate to appeal to the brat's humanity. "How ironic," Naruto chuckled, "since you put my mother in a similar situation, begging for help and then throwing her out like trash. Now, no matter how much you beg, I'm not going to help you. Consider this karmic retribution." As the men rushed in, Naruto walked out of the room. He clearly heard Ozai being carved open like a cooked turkey, as well as his son suffering the same fate as his father. Despite this, Azula was screaming for them not to touch her, and he could hear the rip of her clothes as the men were clearly about to rape the fuck out of her. While Naruto was normally opposed to such behavior, he decided not to intervene in this case and simply walked back outside, past all the various people who were taking anything of value. He had to walk over the bodies of several guards who had been killed, but he made good time out of there. While it was true that he wished to kill the three former members of his family with his own two hands, doing so was not a good idea given the political backlash. If he had done the deed himself, the bounty on his head would be enormous, with the various daimyos of the nations he was friendly with being forced to hand him over. His overall reputation would be ruined, but it will be seen as people revolting against their oppressors, so he was blameless. If they were to investigate and find out who he was, he would tell them the truth and explain that he had been hired to heal the man, only to survive the attack on the mansion because people knew who he was and let him go because killing him would be a waste of talent. Everything had gone exactly as he had hoped, and he knew in his heart that he had avenged his mother by doing so. While he would normally summon a door and teleport home, he was enjoying the peace and quiet of the situation and walked with no particular destination in mind. Nonetheless, as he walked towards nothing, he was stopped by 6 people wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. What surprised him was that, despite their various sizes, they all had orange hair and purple ringed eyes. "Oh, for fuck's sake," Naruto said, slamming his hand into his forehead with enough force to produce an audible smack from the action. "Why do you Akatsuki members keep harassing me? I'm not going to join your group, so don't bother asking." The 6 figures exchanged glances for a split second before one of them took a step forward. "We are not here to recruit you into our organization," the person who came forward stated. "When you murdered Itachi and his partner Kisame, you made it abundantly clear that you would not work for us. Then, let me guess," Naruto sighed as he whipped out his cane in preparation for a fight he was certain would occur, "you came to avenge your fallen members by killing me." "Wrong again," the speaker said, shaking his head, "for their failure was their own. Okay, Naruto said, his face puzzled, so what can I do for you? I require your medical expertise and am willing to pay whatever you charge for it. Naruto could only stare at the man blankly because this was the last thing he expected to hear.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.